All right, we're live.
Okay. Wow. All you have to say is we're live. And then okay. So let's go to the next topic, and I should update what we're talking about. Sorry. On the PTG box. All right. So I'll let you take it away, Hagen. I've been talking all day.
Sure. So I had volunteered to become the Cinder documentation person. There didn't seem to be a really big line of people competing for that role, so it's pretty easy. And part of that is now a question of what that actually means to the team here, because there are a variety of ways to kind of go down that path. Obviously, there's patches and specs and other things that we've been discussing all day here that have a documentation component to them. In addition, I think there's room for improvement in the existing install docs and the documentation generally, more from a user readability perspective. As someone who is not strictly speaking a coder and is more of an end user, having gone through some of those instructions, I do find that they're somewhat abstract and a little hard to follow. There's kind of a minimalistic approach that's been kind of the norm, I guess, which is great in the sense that I think people that already understand how openstack-cinder works can look at that and say, yep, that's right. But if it's someone from the outside trying to make sense of that for the first time, it's not necessarily as instructive as it could be. So the challenge there is, how do you enhance that while still adhering to this sense of, not over embellishing, not making it too wordy, but providing maybe some signposts along the way that say, here's where you are today, here's where you want to get, you're going to have to go down this particular set of bus stops to get where you want to go. That would be the kind of strategy that I'm proposing anyway. So, and for the most part, the challenge with someone doing documentation is to get anyone to pay any attention to it at all. So that's another reality in a sense. So I'd like to be able to get going in the sense of providing value and doing things that are meaningful to the team. So that's, I think, why we wanted to open the floor here to possible comments.
So, thank you for continuing to be willing to help with this. So this all started with trying to look at our install documentation after it got moved out of the doc repository into our area, which admittedly that hasn't really happened, but from kind of looking through what was there, it seemed functionally adequate, or at least it was. So now it's a matter of kind of tying this all together with, do we create a better landing page for users coming in, from the developer portal? I think that's one problem is, right now they get dumped right into our base documentation page, which is a little bit overwhelming for a new person. And we touched on this in the Manila discussions yesterday as well, that there's work to be done in documentation. It all falls out of the discussion that we had in the first contact and related to upstream institutes. So your immediate goal is to kind of make the install docs friendlier for a person who maybe hasn't done development with OpenStack, which I think is good. And then I higher level goal of making it so that people who come to the Cinder webpage, are more likely to find what they're looking for without having to Google around or direct or that kind of thing. So, I guess what, I'm going to be taking a stab at proposing some design changes from the top level. What is your ask now that I've gotten you to the point that you know how to push up patches? I think one of the initial comments from Sean was too much parenthetical comments on what things are, which leads us to our glossary that needs updating. So I think that would be one of the first action items, is to get the glossary appropriately updated, and then use pointers to that for some of those things.
And we discussed that in documents yesterday. It is a little more complicated in the sense that there is a centralized repository, at least for some glossary terms, that we would have to petition to change. And there's a question as to whether the glossary that we would reference would live in the Cinder docs, or whether it would live in the central repository.
So we would need to push patches to update the main OpenStack glossary. Is that a documentation project, I assume?
Yeah, I think it's manageable.
Okay.
And I think that is probably the right way to address some of the ambiguity.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'm doing is simply just following through the doc, see what happens, which most people wouldn't want to do. And you find yourself at a certain point jumping to places that don't really flow logically, just as a happenstance of how things have evolved over time. So, in a sense, it's a bit of manual testing of the docs to see if what, in fact, is, if you're doing the install process, you look at the screen, is the stuff that they say you should see there actually there anymore, right? Or is there some variation against that that would be helpful to update, things like that.
The other piece of this was I had good intention of running through the different platforms and verifying the documentation, which did not happen during Queens. Look at our distributed partners. Red Hat.
I do remember discussing this.
Yeah. And I had every intention of doing this, and I got a VM set up, and I started working through it, and then, life happened. I think it would be good to have somebody run through these. I think some of it we discussed, we should consolidate. When we pulled it over from the docs repository, there were things that are duplicated in each flow that don't necessarily need to be duplicated. They could be collapsed down into one file that can be included. I think that would be helpful for maintainability. So let's maybe do this. Let's set a few goals for you to drive around this here for this release. So I think the first thing would be well, where do you think we should start? You can know more than I have.
eliminating certain pages or shrinking them because they do end up being redundant. It could also require us to add some things if it seems like the jump is too abrupt.
Okay.
And that would help clean things up without necessarily disturbing things much.
Okay.
I mean, I do have some crazy ideas, like actually providing examples of the real world.
That would be nice.
So, you know, user X does it this way, I mean, things like that, that we humanize it a little bit more and provide a little more information or a sense of a way of interpreting or a way that's been interpreted by other users.
So is that something that you can do like on Ubuntu? Okay. Is there any chance that Walt and Eric, you guys have somebody who can look at what's there for SUSE and Red Hat, make sure at least looks valid?
Yeah.
So we have a new documentation person at Red Hat who has started in the last few months and is mostly so far just been doing downstream Cinder documentation stuff.
Okay.
She may be interested in helping with some of this, but I don't really know what her group's kind of upstream involvement is actually going to be.
Another thing, I mean, some of the documentation by third-party folks is actually really good.
Well, so this is kind of one of the problems with there's documentation that we have here about how to do an install with RDO, but I would assume that most people using RDO and CentOS would use the documentation on the RDO site instead of this one. So it's probably a very, I don't know who the audience is exactly that would end up using this particular document for doing that.
And it would be more intelligent to integrate that with links into our documentation, say, because, and the other thing is that some of it, like, I really like the documentation, but a lot of it is the repetition of the stuff in our site. So is there a way to kind of pull that stuff together, make it a little leaner, and take the best of what's been developed by people, as opposed to just having these kind of, right now there's almost no pointers except to say if you need a third-party driver, go over there, as opposed to when you might want to do that, and why.
Do we have any policies on pointing from our documentation to external third party?
No, it should be fine. I was just thinking that it'd be better just to have a link off to Red Hat's existing documentation.
Well, the other reason it's kind of weird is the documentation here, it uses, I think, RDO repos for the packages, but I don't think anybody installs RDO by going and saying, yum, install Cinder and then hand configuring it. Like, that's not really a thing that people do.
Right.
So it's,
well, it's not something Red Hat wants people to do, but you can do it.
you can. I don't know if anybody wants to, though. Like,
If someone was gonna make their own Red Hat-based distro to compete with RDO,
yeah.
then that would be valuable to them, but I don't know if that person exists.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's why it would be helpful to have a more realistic picture of how users are actually approaching these problems, which would be, in most, I guess, from my perspective, working for Dell, most customers are going to attach some sort of third-party storage to their environment. And so the fact that we, for the most part, don't talk about that as being part of the installation process.
So interestingly enough, the RDO website actually links back to this stuff. Which I didn't know.
You just do recursive linking.
Well,
You know,
there's-
I've actually found that a lot in your guys' documentation.
Well, there's a
Go
few
here,
factors.
well, you can do it this way. Oh, look, I'm back at the original page.
Well, most people would pick pack stack or triple O, but if you aren't picking one of those, then it goes back to the, upstream thing.
Well, ideally, the people reading our docs are gonna find something that would be helpful to them, actually, in terms of this would be a smart way to approach this.
If Red Hat sent you here, switch to Ubuntu. No, I'm kidding. Well, I thought we had a good idea when we said point out your documentation, but if your documentation points back here. So maybe what we're missing here is really what's the appropriate scope.
Well, and that's the thing is I don't know. I mean, for our distribution, the documentation is going to mostly focus around using some tooling to install stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas the upstream one is more, here are the packages and how to do it by hand.
Yeah.
It's kind of a different goal.
But wouldn't it make sense then to point out the fact that on the one hand, you could install the packages by hand if for some reason you wanted to do that. However, most people are gonna do X, Y, and Z, and here's how, we can get you down that path so that, because that's the way it feels to a new user. It's like, why the hell am I reading this? Because I'm not really gonna do this, right? It's like this academic exercise to understand something that ultimately is more distracting, as opposed to saying, hey,
If you rebrand it and say, this is the hard way to install it.
come here for
Go here.
We could add use an RDO documentation or package documentation if you want to.
The thing is, it is valuable to have the hard way for people that do want to understand the internals and guts. That's not most people, but it's still valuable to have that. And I think the upstream community has an incentive more of an incentive than like a Red Hat does to publish this kind of stuff.
Well, I agree, but it's kind of weird that it still depends on RPMs that come from somewhere else to do it. You can't really do this with just upstream bids anyway.
And that's why
Following the guide, at least.
I think some more stories would be actually helpful to say, there's a variety of ways for you to attack this problem. Here's what some people have done. And it involves going down maybe a specific OS vendor's path, but at least there's an alert to the new person that there are these alternative approaches to getting this work done. And if you're not interested in learning the internals right now, which most people aren't, then here's the express way to get going.
I suspect we really don't want to write a document that's pure upstream stuff that says, go do pip install cinder. And good luck. I mean, I don't
Then the problem is you get there and now what?
Right.
I still don't know what to do with it. Because at the end of the day, I still have these third-party storage systems I want to actually access and provision.
Well, that's the thing too, is if, I don't, this Cinder installation guide, is it for kind of POC demo stuff, or is it actually supposed to be both ways?
So the other way to look at this though is that if you, not that many people use Cinder this way, but if you want to use Cinder standalone.
Well, we definitely need to document that somewhere too.
Right, and that's part of where this kind of road sign thing would be. So you start out by saying, hey, if all you're trying to do is POC, go down this path and we'll explain it to you. Or if you, for some reason, want to run in a Cinder only, call it native mode, here's how you would set things up. But at this juncture, we stop at that point. Yeah.
do we say anything about having install-cinder and container and any nonsense like that, or point to any other external resources for that?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably gonna become a thing at some point too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're.
Well, not in this context. We're doing it all in our product.
Can you talk to the docs core team about what they think the philosophy of the install guide should be?
Well, they kind of threw it at us and said, hey, go fix your shit.
Well, they wanted to physically move the bits out of the repos for a variety of reasons, but when it was all in one place, there was a philosophy behind it. I don't remember what it was, but I know that.
Well, the philosophy was if you click on, all right, so.
And by philosophy, do you mean the use case for this particular thing, or is it in context of the greater OpenStack?
They were trying to achieve something with the install guide.
Yeah, so if you go to our install guide and we say, hey, you should go through the prerequisites, which includes the OpenStack installation guide, which goes back here that starts from what operating systems are supported, what are the services, what is the architecture, networking, environment, databases, message queues, installing services, launching an instance.
And it shouldn't imply that you're never gonna get back to Cinder.
So I think what happens is you get to, just an explanation of what services are optional.
They're optional, they're not essential.
Don't need to.
But even when you get there, then there's nothing that brings you back to Cinder that says, okay, so we pointed you over, essentially sent us down this highway. But there's nothing that says, now, if you want to go back to where we started, then here's how you get there.
Block storage, optional. If you want block storage, configure one additional storage node. How? So I think that would be the entry point that we should probably add that points over to our documentation that's not missing.
Well, there's other ones there too, like networking for the block storage node, which is also optional.
Well, that was the one I was on. Yeah, so
Yeah,
block storage node with no networking. That's gonna be.
It would be interesting though to hear what kind of the goals and philosophy are for the upstream stuff, because it's kind of weird to try to document how to do a full proper install when there's not actually tooling present that enables that other than just build the entire thing yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can do that, but nobody wants to do that for serious deployment.
Minimal deployment.
It's an educational tool. You can figure out.
It could be.
So it links to our install guide under the minimal deployment for Queens.
Trace complains that we don't have instructions on how to install control pods.
It does.
Not trash. Okay, so they do link to our documentation under the minimal deployment. We seem less optional here. We advise to also install these.
So what does an overall look like?
Yeah,
I think it probably looks a lot
like ours.
oh my God, theirs is a copy. Oh no, only part of it is a copy of the original.
Say, this is how to do it for Ubuntu.
Yeah, which is what we currently have.
And are they using the packages to install?
Probably.
Get installed in here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Well, that was one of the funny things we found when we looked at this last time was that CentOS ones rely on RDO packages, but I think they're missing the step where you actually enable that repository. So people will, if people go type yum install openstack-cinder, they're not gonna find it. It's not there.
There is room for improvement.
Yeah.
So,
And in my mind, it's, a lot of it's just content, right? So, yes, you could do all this, but is that what people really do? And if it's not.
Well, I think Ben's point was the key thing there, but it's probably mostly useful for educational stuff. Nobody's gonna go build like a production deployment with 20 nodes on this, like, that'd be a nightmare.
You think you want to at least have some sort of alert to say, the purpose of this is very narrow. Because otherwise, we're basically not being helpful at all, and we actually want people to install Cinder and be successful. So there should be at least a way to point to a more efficient and effective path, as opposed to saying, you know, this is how you do it, which is what you're saying.
so. So what would make more sense, words are hard.
I think the problem is the upstream community has different goals and incentives than the downstream distributors. Downstream distributors obviously have an incentive to make it really easy to install it, use it, and everything. Upstream community might not share that goal, right? Our goal is more about developer advocacy and getting people to be able to contribute effectively to the community, not to be OpenStack users, but to be OpenStack developers.
Well, is there a team upstream that's driving this stuff now?
There used to be an install guide sub-team of the docs team.
Right.
And I remember talking to them when we had to do the vanilla one because it didn't exist, and then we rewrote it. And then they threw us out. Like right after it was kind of crazy, but they definitely had strong feelings about this is how it must be done.
But a lot of the upstream doc team kind of disbanded already.
I think that's part of the problem. Is like,
So
they're the ones who could answer his questions, and they're not here.
Right, so I don't
We don't have
really,
the answers.
I don't know who's really driving all of this now.
So, I mean, we would want to start with Peter or Alex as the, people that kind of find out, all right, you asked us to take a look at this, we're doing it, we're trying to figure out what we want to do. What I think would make more sense to make this more, I don't think we can get rid of the adding Cinder to your OpenStack environment section, given that the rest of the documentation flows into it with the assumption that it's there. But I don't think there's anything that stops us from adding notes on this page that says, hey, this is very much an academic exercise to make you aware of what's necessary to get Cinder installed. And then have pointers to, if you're looking for a quick development environment, install DevStack. Here's where that is at, and Cinder is installed as part of that. Your friendly distribution has documentation here, here, and here, if you're looking to do one of these distributions in an automated installation. If you want to learn how to do it by hand, that's what the rest of this.
If you want to build a helicopter out of a box of parts.
Yeah. Is
That meets the needs of the upstream community somewhat in my point of view.
right, and that while also providing a, barrier that if you're somebody new and you're coming along and you're like, because I ran into that with the Red Hat documentation where there was a little link that said, here's the easy way to do it. And then there was I'm going to build this helicopter out of a box of parts, and I spun for a day and went, it would have been nice if there was a warning, you don't really have to do all of this, but we provide it here for educational purposes. But also then we should make sure that the installing for Ubuntu and installing for Red Hat and installing for SUSE works.
But no, the SUSE one, it's missing the repository.
That's the same problem.
The same
So
problem.
the upgrade one on there, just under installation guide, it's actually pretty tricky. There's upgrade process.
It fails.
I don't know when on the left.
Oh,
So,
Sitting between
but the second one.
Extensions or.
I don't know when this was last updated, but it's actually pretty interesting looking. We probably should be maintaining this too and make sure it's actually current. Talk about rolling upgrades and all that.
To go to supplement.
The upgrade is
I wonder who wrote this.
part of that, of the upgrade stuff, anyhow, and I think I touched a couple of things. So it should be kind of good.
Yeah.
Probably hasn't been touched at all and clean. I don't think much has changed there.
It says it was updated yesterday on the page, but.
That's, yeah, anytime a job gets merged, all the docs get refreshed and published. Take timestamps change.
And I think from the academic point of view, if you were actually trying to educate users as to what's happening during the install, there's really not anything there that tells you why you're doing this or what it's accomplishing. Just follow this set of steps. So I think there's opportunities there to talk about, well, what's happening in this, why are we putting this in place?
In some of these steps, we actually explain why you're doing in the specific order. Because it's hard to understand in the upgrades and rolling upgrades what's going on and why we have a specific order. So in some of them, we actually mention the reason we have it.
And again, I haven't seen a lot contextualizing it in terms of networking and so on and so forth. At the end of this all, it's going to actually be this interoperable
Oh, yeah.
service, and it's written in a way to make sure that it does interoperate with the other projects.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I guess my proposal then, this is gonna be. So so do those two things first. And once we've gotten that far, or in parallel,
So there's actually a whole different guide about how to configure volume drivers. Okay. Further down in a different thing here.
any disagreements with those statements thus far?
So I'm looking towards the summit, maybe an opportunity to get feedback from actual users of the documentation, see who's using it, what's their intention, are they getting what they need out of it, what would make a difference. It's difficult, I think, certainly for me and for a lot of people in the room to put their shoes on.
Yeah. The problem is we're beyond the point where we could submit topics for Vancouver.
The forum we still can,
Oh,
assuming we can actually get, engineering people in the room to talk about, that would help documentation would be something that would help attract some people.
okay.
There's that weekend training, which is for new people.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be into this to some extent. That we'll be able to take additional learning from that. We've done that in the past.
And we've got customers that are using OpenStack. It's not possible to say to them.
Do you love it? Do you hate it?
Yeah.
What should you do better?
So one other thing I just noticed in our Queen's configuration documentation, we seem to have a whole page in there about option changes in Okata, and there's not one for Queen.
Right, I was gonna change that.
It looks like we need to do another page or
Yeah, I think
whatever.
someone added that, obviously back in the Kata, and no one ever picked up that work going forward. I wonder if there's, some kind of sync, plugin.
Well, it's just a table of kind of like the other options.
Yeah, but if the table that's manually created right now, I wonder if there's a sync plugin that we can use that would be able to somehow, automatically pull that out, so it's not something that we need to do, to remember to do every release, it just automatically gets populated with, here's some different from last time.
We probably have to start adding tags for like what version something was deprecated. I don't know.
Well, we can mark them as deprecated in a certain version, right? We theoretically should be doing that anyway.
Yeah, I think so.
And there's supposed to be things plugins for generating a config option table, but I'm not sure where that is right now.
Yeah, we use it to.
Well, one of them is just a list of all the new options.
Yeah, so I'm just saying,
I'm not
it's
sure.
kind of, in a way, it's more the same, whether it's there or not yet, I don't know. But it's definitely gonna be something that's a pain to keep up to date, or remember to keep up to date.
Is there anybody who's willing to take a look at the upgrade path documentation?
That was the one about RP conversion pinning.
Yeah. For at least one strip.
I can look it over.
That's the starting point at least. Great. Well, I think if we get through those things, it's an improvement.
I need to do that.
Yeah, it's plain to do there, and there'll be an improvement. And if we, if I pick the items from before to work on the config stuff, those are all good improvements to our documentation to make it more usable at least. So, yeah, we've got plenty of to-dos there. All right, anybody else have thoughts, questions, concerns on that? Mutable config options, so this got added yesterday after discussion in the Manila room.
We're already doing that, but
Yeah, the Manila team added, changing the log option on the fly, and they showed a patch that we've already applied.
Okay.
So, we're at least on par with that.
Okay.
And that's the minimum for the role, is just changing log levels, so is there something else in addition to that here, or?
That was the question. Is,
Okay.
do we feel the need to do more, or are we just gonna stick with the minimum for right now?
Yeah, I guess this is a good conversation. We need to, we kind of get, the changing log levels is easy, because all it is we just had to tell, and service initialization that, look for mutable config options, and then Oslo log takes care of log levels. If there's, we can't have everything updated on the fly without a restart, because there's some things like database URL and stuff like that can't change, but if we have anything else that is runtime changeable, that is something that we need to implement in Cinder.
Yeah, the Manila team also talked about changing driver attributes too, and
Actually, that was, explained in another part. One part would be to know what are the core variables that can be changed, and the other would be the drivers that would be totally separate work. So
yeah, the
depending on the
drivers would
drivers,
have to put up a patch and say which one
Exactly.
they want.
Mm-hmm. And then we only needed to decide what are the options that we can dynamically change. We need to go, someone has to go through all the options and see what can be toggle and to work.
I still think there's plumbing that needs to be added to Cinder itself to trigger the driver to say, hey, you have two options now.
Yeah, there's a handler that we have to put in there.
Can we go back a little bit for those of us who haven't been following this too closely on what mechanisms that do Oslo config actually provide to support this? Because, for example, you're mentioning that for the logs, we don't have to do anything mostly. Just say this config is, but there is some plumbing that needs to go between when you reload something, you see the change, you have to execute something in Oslo log to actually change the logging.
Oslo log has that handler in it.
Mm-hmm.
And the, what?
On Specific Hub, sorry.
Yeah, but what do you mean it's in, but then we are changing how it is used in Cinder? Because right now we restart the whole service.
Yeah, so there's a
Yeah.
change to the service creation where you tell it to like, restart action or something, and you set it to like mutate now. It's like a one-line change.
Yeah, but I mean, it may be one line change in the config, but we have a service which actually is handling that call as well.
So maybe we're not done, and I kind of remember this, that we were just trying to test it, it wasn't working right, and there was some question of whether it was because it was running under screen at the time, or whether there was something else.
We have custom code that also handles the single hanger. And it's being executed. So if we have to remove that, we have to see if we have a way to handle what we are already handling there in the change. So even if, when you say that Oslo log already has a handler, it's like, but we are running the service. Oslo log is decoupled, it's not in there. We are running our service instance, so we would have to actually let the logging, hey, this has changed, do something about it. I don't see how it would connect a library we use.
Normally they register a handler, so they probably are changing the log level, but it sounds like we're killing our services at the same time, so it doesn't matter.
Yep.
So we need to change that. We need to figure out a different signal that we can use.
So do the configuration option besides saying it's mutable, have another option to let it know who the handler is for that specific option?
For us to do our own config options, we need to register a handler. And then when.
For specific configuration options or for all?
If I remember right, it's for all, and then we get past, I think Oswald config will tell us what changed, what the original value is, and what the new value is. And then we have to have specific logic in our handler to make those changes or whatever.
And for those changes, we are not handling like the log ourselves, we would pass it along to an
I
handler.
don't think we need to pass it along. I think Oswald log.
The log is kind of a weird case for what we're talking about going forward, I think.
Yeah, but if it's the first one we're going to do, we may want to know how it will interact with any other we're going to do afterwards. Otherwise, we may have to redo.
From my understanding, we don't need to do anything with the logging. We just have to have the service initialized with this mutable flag.
That was the thing we were saying before when you-
But I guess we missed on that we're already using that signal for other purposes and so then we do need to fix that.
The purpose was similar, which was basically basically just asking to reload the configuration, but the reloading meant stopping and starting again.
Okay. Now, I forgot about this, but I remember trying to track that down. Do you know where that is done, where that logic is in the code?
Probably in service.py. And it's probably called stop and start and wait, because that's Oslo service what calls.
Yeah. Okay.
Wait.
It seems strange that Oslo config would assume that as a library that they can override SIG-HUB for every program that uses it. That doesn't really make a lot of sense.
I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't know.
Where's our signal handler?
How is a library to decide that you can just
The service is not, they handle the signal, and then they call a method in your class, which is stop, restart,
It's actually
wait.
Oslo service.
Yeah, that's the Oslo service,
That makes
and that's what we currently have. We have all those methods. We have reset, stop, wait.
Well, yeah, so our handler is
I don't know if we just have to remove it, call it, but we need to do more than just that configuration.
We should remove what we have, we should keep it and just make it small.
But what we have right now is actually stopping all the Rabbit and Q ports. It stops listening, waits until everything stops processing, and then restarts. So our reload mechanism is basically restart.
Yeah, I was gonna ask the use case for the HA stuff, where you push.
I don't even know what.
Well, okay, so backing up for a second,
It was for RPC.
how much work do you wanna keep something that you don't know the use case for?
Oh, no, I don't want to keep it, I'm just saying that we need.
No, I'm just trying to figure out. I understand that the issue has to be resolved.
For me, it's basically, system control, restart.
Right, I was thinking on our distro, we're using system control or pacemaker or Docker or something,
How we start, that needs the same results.
Yeah.
And it takes the same time, it uses the same timeout configuration option, everything is basically the same. And so,
But maybe there's a use case, for testing or. I don't think we have that wrinkle in vanilla, but we would want that wrinkle, so I'm thinking.
Seeing where that's registered.
And you may want to maintain backward compatibility with it, but what's it for?
Signal handler.
What's registered inside of Oslo service?
According to Mihal's,
But we have a handler.
is
Oslo
to,
service.
Yeah,
for,
looking where our,
when you're doing a
Oh, I
rolling
saw it a
upgrade.
second ago.
in the
Yeah, that's what I was
car,
I think Cinder
But
manager.
the thing is that the
It's called
comment,
reset.
the commit message
Manager
says
dot
that this is to avoid the need to restart all the services when upgrading of the deployment is
Right.
completed. But it's doing the exact same thing, it's doing a restart.
Right. And I mean, even that says specific control. That says even DevStack, you've got like system control.
Oh, yes.
You know,
Yeah.
no, that's what, version can change.
Well, that's what we did it for, originally at Cinder,
I don't see us registering it anywhere else.
because it's registered in Oslo service
Oslo service
and not
does
our.
the handling. And it also takes care of, if you have a parent process and children processes, it
Well, if they do
handles.
that, then they must handle the case where they're, dealing with the mutate.
Yeah,
Mutate
but
options too.
if they deal with it, or they do whatever they want, and then we restart the service, it's useless.
But where,
I don't see where
Where do
we're
we
starting
use
our service.
Look, in service, it's called, restart or reset.
That's only on the Windows.
No, it's in class service.
Yeah, I was looking
Step,
for it.
reset, that's the one, and it's Mihal's batch that says add handlers to reset RPC version pin.
So it's just server reset?
It actually resets everything.
So there's another reset method in the service class they call self.manager.reset. And also called super reset, which is probably what actually resets the service. That's the service.py1 reset.
So we basically need to stop calling.
Well, I don't think so. That's what I was trying to figure out. I think we just have to tell it to go call what other thing we want to update.
They have an example here that points to a patch that's in Nova for adding the manual config. And the only thing Nova did was change that process logs call to restart method equals mutate.
Well, we know that's not gonna work with the backend driver scheme.
Yeah, we need some kind of mechanism to
Yeah.
tell the driver, hey, you just started.
no, that's just if we mark any of our config options as immutable.
I think it still wouldn't work, because we do copying around of the config structure and all that stuff.
Yeah, that config object is created at driver startup time.
Right.
It's static after that.
Right.
And there's no mechanism to say, hey, driver, you just got updated, go look at all your new configs and do something.
Yeah. So for the drivers,
They made an Oslo config.
The drivers could also get the signal, because Oslo service
On what
would
method,
take care of passing the signal. The problem is that the drivers would need to do the same thing we are doing when creating the services and forking the processes, which is basically let the driver know that their configuration is the section, get the section, because if you get I don't know how it's doing the Oslo config, detecting the changes and passing them along, but if you change something within the driver, and Oslo service passes the signal to the different processes, your driver, your backend specific would receive the change, but they would actually have to check within their specific section.
So I can only reference the three-bar driver, this is what I have in my mind right now, but when we construct an object, we copy some values out of the thing, and that's it.
Yeah, but the trick is that you get that conflict you get is tricked, you get tricked into thinking that your section where you are reading your parameters is in default section or is in the general area, but it wasn't in the general area, really.
yeah, but a lot of drivers copy values out of their startup
Well,
time.
they do say for something to be mutable, it has to be something that's checked every time. It can't be something I do.
Those are just
Alright.
immutable options.
Like, unless the driver is gonna do setup again and read all the new values.
That's what I'm saying,
Nothing's
that
gonna
we need some way to trigger the driver to say, hey, your stuff has changed, you need to start.
But even in those cases where the drivers are constantly checking their config file, because some configuration parameters are for the connection, and you do it, let's say at the beginning, you copy them, you're good. But other times, I think the RBT driver, for example, actually checks in different parts while running and doing some operations, the configuration, and uses as a variable to use
Uses
it.
self-set configuration, but I'm still not sure that's gonna get live updated.
No, I don't think so,
Because
because
it's
when
copied
that,
in the
it's
backend
copied
stuff.
when the volume manager starts that driver, it copies that stuff into.
Yeah.
But we could make it for the mutable.
Well, that's what we're just saying though, is for it to
Yeah.
actually work, we're gonna have to get write a bunch of code that
We're gonna have to
actually
make
does
some changes to the volume manager to support the driver, so be aware.
it. None of this is gonna
That's all I'm
just
saying.
work already with the Oslo stuff.
Yeah.
Then all you need to do is update the Python object and expect that the drivers are gonna inspect the Python object instead of having their own cache.
I think we need to be explicit, because there's a lot of drivers that assume that once they get it, when it's startup time, they use that forever.
But that's why
But
you
for
have
an
the
option to become mutable, they're gonna have to change the code anyways.
Yeah.
And when they change it, just change it to go straight to the config object instead of having a copy.
There's a lot of details to sort out with it though. I mean, what do you do if you get an update and the driver considers the update to be an invalid option? And you have to handle how to error out sensibly.
I think it's
I mean,
much better to be explicit and say, here, you have a change, you have this, you have to.
it sounds to me like the
There's
e-driver,
an error, that's what Eric is saying.
I mean,
You change, but now it breaks everything.
it sounds to me like each driver, a lot of drivers in do setup and check for setup error, do validation of options.
Yes,
And it sounds like we're gonna need a new method that's
Yeah.
like read the options and validate them.
the good thing is that we already have a flag in the driver, in the volume manager, that if the driver is uninitialized, it won't work.
Right.
So in this case, if we fail to reload the config, we just set that flag back to false again. And then
So for now, should we, instead of starting in the driver case, should we start in
Yeah.
the core
We're
option?
jumping right into something.
Yeah.
Because we're starting on the hard.
Exactly.
And it's something I don't think we ever wanna do. I don't wanna change drivers.
I think there's probably cases where it's a good idea.
I would
but-
like to add new pools.
Yeah.
Well, there's a simpler case, which is, I forgot to enable multipassing. I just want to enable it. It's a simple, I mean, it's a simple one because
Why do I have to
it,
knock the
it,
whole?
it matches the mutable case, which is you read it every time you create a volume from image.
Yeah.
So you don't store it.
Or if you want to roll out password changes and not have to take down your service. and Stuff like that. So what would the interesting core options be to just kind of start with for this? I'm sure there's some good candidates.
First, we need to make sure the log level change works.
Well, so I'm kind of confused about that because we already did a different log level change thing, right?
Yep.
So,
Well, that's an API exposure.
yeah, well, right. So what happens when you do both of them now? Does it even work right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
With everything.
Not even that, but we can, once we sure that the log level works, we can add those changes to the API as well. So you can change by config file or the API.
No, you can't do that because then you end up with this messy thing where if you change it in the API and it didn't get written to the config file and your config file doesn't match the running service,
Well,
you don't
we have right now
want to,
that. Right now, if you change dynamically the.
with the log level, but that's fine.
Oh, yeah,
log level,
okay,
But you
yeah,
don't want to
oh.
do that with others.
Oh, no,
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 we're not
no,
gonna do
no.
that with other things, no. Right. What I just said.
Okay, sorry.
Wait, let me argue with you about that. I'm not here.
No,
we can't do it that way.
I could spend a half hour arguing about the same thing.
You can't put all the options to be mutable through the API. Okay, so first we need to make sure that the action, that the mutable config for log levels works.
We need to make sure we don't restart our services on pickup.
Yeah.
to do, but it's also gonna be different in scheduler versus volume, and we have to look at each one, I mean, because the volume one has got all this extra stuff in it.
Yeah.
Is that all the further we go right now, or is there more we want to do?
Well, what's the first actual step that we're trying to implement here?
Ensuring that what we think works right, ensuring that what we think should work right now works.
Yeah, we have to do that at a minimum.
Well, that's good, but that one option doesn't get us very far on mutable config options.
Well, the question I asked over another group was, did we have any compelling uses for other options that people knew about right now? In other words, are we just marching through here because we can do it?
Well, that's what I'm trying to find right now.
And right, so we were kind of saying, look, unless somebody was enthusiastic about going through and marking off every possible mutable config option, making a case for it, nobody raised their hands. We were short on, labor.
Well,
And
unfortunately,
we had a lot of other work to do. So the inclination was to say, you make a case for, I mean, it's working now. So if you want something to be mutable, you argue to us why it should be, what the use case is, and then do the work of, putting it in there.
The only thing,
I'm not saying necessarily follow, that's just a data point from another project.
well, unfortunately, most cases where someone's gonna say, I wanna change this, I think it's gonna be in the driver option.
Like they want to change the password for the backend.
Yeah.
That might be.
That's why I was trying to find,
the
interesting
name did
points
it,
to start
it
with,
didn't work.
because,
But the only thing we need to worry about now is if we can actually meet the Rocky goal and be able to update.
Debug is really useful, that's why you did it another
well,
way.
I thought the goal was mutable config option.
Yeah, and if we can get it where we can change log level, then all the base plumbing is in place. And if someone does want to have something in their driver,
The cross-project
the foundation's there, they have to implement code to do it.
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, the minimal base plumbing.
I don't think the plumbing for drivers is gonna be there at all. But
No, it's not, and then they'll have to implement that part of it to be able to change the driver.
I'm just saying the cross-project.
Well, that's what's funny though, is I thought the cross-project requirement was have mutable config options, but it sounds
No.
like the requirement is just to be able to change the log level.
No, because they want to make sure everybody can
Which is
do
very
it.
different.
Plumbing. It's very, very modest, but then that enables you if you have a reason to do some more, you can do it.
Except we already met that requirement with a whole different implementation.
I understand, but not everybody did, right? So there.
Well, that's why I'm not sure that that's really the proper
So
requirement.
I think we've already met the goal, right? And we implemented the same.
Not if our stick up is restarting all of our systems.
Right. We did implement their example patch. We just aren't sure that it hasn't negatively affected something else, so we should probably at least do it and do that. At one point, there was a spec for mutable config options, and that one, I don't know what happened with that.
Cinder.
That's a totally different
For
discussion.
dynamic reconfig, and it was,
Well, it's
another one of those that's gotten lost.
but it's, I mean, it's a different name, but it's the same.
Yeah, oh, yeah, it is,
Yeah.
but
And this is a novel config supported and approach and consistent across all the services.
Yeah, and that was the problem that I had with the other spec, is that it smelled like something that shouldn't be uniform for the most part. I think the most compelling case is driver option.
Yeah.
So I don't have to completely restart the service.
And then we also have to consider the new default section that would also affect those drivers.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know how that code is gonna map into the stuff that exists in Oslo.
I'm sure we just need to move things around and like we do in the normal case and prepare it before calling whatever we decide to call in the driver.
Yeah. Well, for the most part, reading the docs here on this change is that, there's three mechanisms of which you can use the new changes. So basically, it's kind of cool, like drivers should really just check the value every time they use it, and then it's also completely. It doesn't solve the other problem of making sure that the values are actually correct and valid. And I think that problem probably should be put in place.
We can get some of that at the basic level by encouraging more of the choices, options, and min and max for numeric options, because I try to hit a lot of those in driver reviews, but we're still missing them for a lot of options. I think it could actually use that, and that gets you foundation in Oslo config. So it doesn't check everything that we need to check, but it can help if we get better about looking at that.
I think actually, the way they're handling it's not supposed to be like if you change a database connection string. It knows you can't change that over to log a warning.
Well, because the option has to be marked as mutable.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more things like, the URL to my three-part backend.
Yeah.
Only the three-part drivers know whether that's gonna be valid. And
Yeah.
what to do with it when it does change, does it want to actually
Kind of
test it and see if it works? And
back-end login credentials would be one, like that stuff. I think the filter and goodness functions is probably another one that would be good if people could actually, I don't know how widely those are used, but
yeah, I mean,
for people using them, that could be one too.
So for the scheduling functions, filters, you're using the waiter to, it might be interesting.
and what to do when.
Honestly, looking at the default section, I don't see that anything we should want to keep there.
Default volume type.
The volume type conceivably, quota gigabytes, maybe.
Yeah.
You're unlikely to want to change. Like, OS API volume listen, or your root wrap compromise location.
And that's it, to have it, you have to do the brand new driver section and then negative. Sorry, we're not having that the entire system.
Have it do what?
Basically, you add a new backend and instead of bouncing the entire data service, just say, hey, pick up, oh, there's my new backend.
I'm not sure how much their mutable config stuff is gonna help with that. But
Yeah.
it's a good idea though.
Yeah, I can make up a use case for that one. Yeah. I mean, nobody's, they're not gonna, I'm gonna share type, but volume type, but nobody's not gonna go into anything.
Yeah. I don't know what happens when there's a brand new section versus an existing section value that changes.
If you add the brand new section, you gotta add it to like the enable drivers.
Yeah, you have to add it there.
Then you probably find it.
Yeah.
think like, the one thing that I know I always have to help people with is setting the like default backend and default, all those kind of things, you know, goes around sometimes. That'd be easy-ish.
Make graceful shutdown, timeout. I can change it without shutting down before shutting down.
That's not a secret, because the default timeout is not good for any service that is actually doing things. It's 60 seconds. And sometimes even with a scheduler service that is doing nothing, it takes 20 seconds. I don't know I tried to figure out in the green thread which one was holding things, but I couldn't. So 60 seconds could mean that.
What product management called an aspirational alternative?
Would we expect anybody to use this much for APIs?
I look
Yeah, it's more for restart the volume stuff, right? Like,
and for the schedule.
right.
It's cheap to
Schedulers are easy to restart.
The scheduler right now for some of tricky. You have the action details which are synchronous, and they are also, if you have increased the RPC timeout for call, and you may want not to restart them, and if we're going to start moving the backup operations and request through the scheduler, we may also not want to restart it. So we may want to use this in the scheduler as well.
All right, so I feel like we should move on from this, as this could go on further. So we've got the 2 action items to make sure that we don't restart our services with a big help, and ensure that the log level can be mutable with the existing support. Do we want to just leave what else we can do right now as future discussion? Any action items we want to take out of that? Is there anybody who's motivated and wants to work on that? Well,
Couldn't hear what
the last sentence. Is there anybody who wants to take working on looking at other config options and what plumbing needs to be done to make them mutable? Yeah. Okay, so that sounds like future work. We've got a list of stuff here to work from when we get there. So we just need to verify that we're meeting the minimum requirements.
Tommy, you didn't open that one? This one's what we were talking about.
I'm sorry, it's
Since you,
I'm trying to fix bugs.
oh good, Spots was wanting somebody to fix bugs for her, so maybe it's No, never mind, we were just joking. All right, so I think we're done with that one, which leaves us with our probably last topic for the day then, which goes to the man who is now actually raising his hand at the end of the table. On zoning enhancements. Zoning enhancements.
So I guess the first question is, I've only met a few operators that are actually using those. I think other vendors besides, us, IBM, this is taking advantage of the zone manager. We would like to extend it because we have to have it. We extensively use NPID connections between the array and the VM. And in this case, the ports are on the VM, so we have to have zoning so that it's volumes. And we had a number of requests from customers to provide some additional support, such as allowing us to, allowing them to provide either a blacklist or a whitelist of target ports for zoning operations. They don't want us to zone all of the ports from the array, to the VM. So that's one of our requests. Another request is they would like us to be able to zone parallel. So if they have two fabrics, they would like to be able to zone them at the same time. We've been talking to a little bit to Cisco and Brocade about aliasing, because we have customers that would like to have aliasing support.
I thought you already had aliases. I thought there were already aliases.
There's friendly zone naming.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And that, customers actually like that. They like the friendly zone naming, but they would like to be able to have aliasing at some point. And those are the kind of things that we're looking at. And we'd like to take those forward in the community, but we're not sure, where zoning is going right now. So it's
Almost nobody's developing it.
I know.
And both of the vendors don't seem to be supporting it very well.
Yeah.
Brocade and I and some other people got together and created it originally. I think the black and white list should be easy to do.
Yeah.
That should just be a config option in the zone manager section.
Well, there's two pieces to that. They want to have global ones on a array basis, and they also want to have black and white lists in an extra spec so that they can load balance.
Extra spec.
So you
Specs aren't available at attached. That's gonna have to be done at a driver level, I think.
It can't be done through the zone manager can't access those extra specs?
They are available, but they're not available to the zone manager at all, right?
Well, why not? Isn't it just a matter of reading them out of the database? You got the volume ID, right?
Well, the zone manager, correct. The volume ID is not passed to the zone manager at all. It's a connection info at the bottom end of initialized connection, and that is passed to the zone manager, and then it filters, makes it be creating the zones or not, based on the data that it got. So there really isn't a hell of a lot of cinder-based volume information in that connection info. It's basically just what is needed for Nova to actually do the break call to the SE connection, or sorry, the SE connection at that point.
Yeah.
But you could, in principle,
You could access the extra spec through the zone manager, or the driver itself, I guess, could throw that blacklist in there before it returns in info.
Yeah, this is gonna require changes in the driver and the zone manager to support this. I think every driver that does it. You could add an option to pass in the volume type at attach time, but I don't, most drivers at initialized connection time don't even let that, they don't care.
Yeah.
For the most part.
So the zone manager could, based on the volume, look up the
If you have the volume size, you can look up
Yeah.
anything in the extra stuff if
Okay.
you wanted to at that point, decide what to do.
Are you able to run CI? Are you able to run CI?
Or am I able to run a CI?
Yep.
If we take this over, I guess we would have to. There's no choice.
Yeah, you'd have to modify both of the drivers to support the blacklist and
Although, is it really in the driver, or is it in the zone manager itself? I was thinking it's in the zone manager itself.
Yeah, I guess you could filter those out in the zone manager, the driver would be really different. API to return the target port from the array, what do you mean by that? We already have that in the initiator target map.
Yes, but what we have is we have vendors that want to be able to, through a cinder command, query through cinder to the array to have the array return its ports that it's going to use for mapping volumes and return the fabric that each of the ports is on as well.
We don't support any of the underlying protocol information that is in your APIs for letting doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah, consumers with API shouldn't even know that.
Yeah, they shouldn't even know what the underlying attachment or volume type is or anything like that.
I mean, I have that, the new attachments API, I think. We store the connectors, so.
Well, yeah,
So, you're gonna add stuff and stuff.
well, it has the initiator connect,
Got everything.
initiator target map, it's in there, yeah. I mean, I guess we could. But you want all of the targets that you use for all lines or on per line basis?
So this would be on an array basis, so
Yeah.
you want to see all the targets that the array supports, and if they're on fabrics that the.
Seems like the administration interface to the array itself, not really familiar. Yeah.
Well, but, but then they have to go map each of those ports, those WWPNs, and figure out what fabric they're on.
Hold on, no. So right now, the cinder drivers have no idea what fabric it is.
Yeah.
I never get fixed that.
Well, it's actually not too hard to figure out.
But there's no contract there.
There's no
Yeah, there's no
but this API could figure it out. You could use the lookup service to determine what.
So
This is doable.
This is more like an API into the zone manager.
Yeah.
It's kinda,
But you want to keep track of all the returns.
yeah.
All the stuff the driver returns, you keep track of it somewhere. Query it, right?
Yeah.
So like. Doesn't seem like.
Don't you have that on the switch?
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about that, and like, I'm pretty sure that fiber channel, like.
Yeah, the
switches
switch has
you-
all of that.
Go look at it, like.
But you have to query the switch to see who's, if those ports are logged in.
Yeah.
Right? But we have to get those ports initially from the array. The array has to tell us what those ports are, so you can then go look them up to see what fabric they're on.
Which I guess you should be able to do by, I mean, you could like, either have to go talk to the array.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, we can add new API, but it's basically like, if you just scrape the attachment record, so that they,
Well, so this is not during the attach, this is pre-attach. Part of what we want to be able to do is take this information and construct an appropriate blacklist.
The port is based upon the ports that aren't being used?
The ports that are being used, that are on fabrics that are in the fabrics.com.
yeah, and
The real question is,
Why isn't this transparent to the zone manager then? Because the zone manager itself knows, or can query the switch to find out where the zones are and what ports are being used on the back end of the array. why do you want to blacklist at that level? I'm kind of confused as to why you're blacklisting ports that are being used.
Well, so what our vendors want to be able to do, let's say we have an array that's got 30 ports, and 16 of them are on Fabric A and 16 of them are on Fabric B. If in a shared environment where this array is not totally owned by OpenStack, instance, some of these ports will be used by, other applications. And what we want to be able to do is limit the ports that are used to a specific set of ports that are on the same fabric.
Mm-hmm.
And what our customers want to know is which ones are active as far as OpenStack is concerned. Which ones would you zone so that I can add those to my whitelist or blacklist, so I can say, I only want a subset of those that you can see, right? That's the purpose of the blacklist or the whitelist, is I want to subset the ports that OpenStack is using.
So currently, I'm referencing the 3-part, that we look for all available ports and trying to map all of them currently right now.
And that's not what our vendor wants. They want to control and say, I only want to use this small set of ports.
Yes. So in the case of 3-part, for example, if we have any attaches, then if you try and do one attach, you're going to use all the ports.
Yeah.
So you're going to need to do this before any attaches ever happen to begin with. And that's
Yes.
We have the same thing with the LSD driver, and we just added a driver config option and say, these are my ports that I'm using from my OpenStack cloud, don't bother with the other ports.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
It needs to be a driver-based blacklist.
Well, that's an alternative place that it could be implemented. The driver could implement a blacklist, tell us what ports that they can use, but not all drivers have that today. I'm looking for something that will allow me to do this for, all the drivers.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to think, like,
Does 3-part have that?
Well, and the problem is that you're gonna have to change the driver to
Yeah.
even implement any part of what you want, and that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Okay.
just just adding a generic port blacklist option or something.
That any FC driver can use would
Yeah.
be valuable in that case. But then each driver vendor's gonna have to implement that to not add it to the initiator target map, and or
Well, can we? if
the
we
zone
can-
manager could read it and remove those target maps.
Yeah. I guess,
The problem is that you're not gonna be able to query the back end to find out what's being used, because in the case of 3-part, it's gonna say everything's being used.
Right.
Unless you detach everything
Yeah.
from scratch.
cause like, I don't know how it works with the other ones, but like, you can't just expose the volume to like some ports on an array, so it's either connected to,
And
out of the array or not.
so there are a number of arrays that are like that. And so that's why this came through as a zoning request. So the array exposes this volume, and it's exposed on all of its ports. The control point is zoning, so that when you zone, these are the paths that you're going to get.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then,
So it seems like you're asking kind of two things, right? One is a new API and find out what's being used.
Well,
And
I'm not sure it's
another-
what's being used, it's what can the array use? What could the array use? Or what could the array map? What could it return on its initiator target map that would be zoned?
and then,
That doesn't seem like a cinder driver or a cinder thing at all. That's a back end thing.
That's a back-end thing? Okay.
Yeah. Because in case of 3-part, everything. There's no reason why we wouldn't want it, but a different back end is gonna have something
Yeah.
different. But I think the other part of it is adding the ability to do blacklisting at all.
Yes.
Which seems like it could fit transparently in the zone manager itself. Right, you just add an option, say, here's the ports that I know of, don't ask me how I got them, but
Yeah.
don't use these, and then when you get an initiator target map, then you just nuke those ones that match that and done.
If the query to the driver to determine what ports it has and, what fabrics those ports are on, that would be useful to make that blacklist or whitelist determination. To these are the ports I want to use.
I guess the same could be said for iSCSI in the case of, multi-pathing.
Yeah,
Ports that are available, because we do something similar for that for the three-part iSCSI stuff.
yeah, people.
Some of them we don't intentionally use because,
Yeah.
but we don't report that outside of the driver at all. I don't know how useful that would be, but.
So that'd be not reporting some IQNs on the, from the array when you're mapping a
Well, in our case, it's not even an IQN yet, it's just an IP.
It's just a file here.
Activity target, whatever that may be, right?
Yeah, whatever that may be.
So is the end goal here that you can, like, are we gonna change the zone manager to use the whitelist blacklist stuff? Or is this something else you guys just want APIs to use?
So my goal would be to change the zone manager to add whitelists and blacklists, and FTP. So query to determine what, what ports are, and, port information from each of the arrays, if they wanted to implement that. So that the, vendors could see which ports are attached to which fabrics. Which ports are attached, which ports are on which fabrics.
Separate from the blacklisting and the zone manager.
Separate from the blacklisting.
That thing wouldn't need that API.
Well,
No. It could be used by the vendor to make judgment calls on what it wants in the blacklist.
the switch has that information of what's available on which fabric, because even after you plug the line in as part of the protocol itself, it knows, hey, I'm here, I'm available, so most of the switches will support that just by querying the switch itself.
But you have to know what ports are on which array, so, you still have to query the array to figure out what its, what the WPNs are, so you can go to the switch to figure out if it's on fabric A, B, C, whatever the fabric is.
But then, I guess, what I'm confused about is like, do you want a Cinder API, query the array to get the thing to go and set a Cinder.conf value for the zone manager? Like, it seems a little backwards.
Yeah,
I don't disagree with the use case, it's just like the actual user experience. Is there
Well,
anything you feel like, is that not suck as much?
So eventually, well, yeah.
I mean, like, if I were a developer that was tasked with doing this, I would go add that check to use like the Ansible, Puppet, or whatever, setting up my OpenStack thing, right? Like, what do you use? What options do I have? Running the whitelist.
So that would be the next step, would be to figure out how to make use of that in other elements of OpenStack so that you can automatically set the whitelist to the blacklist.
Right.
And I actually don't know enough about the user interface that, is there some place we can plug into the user interface?
and we don't do administration, back-end administration stuff in UI at all.
Yeah, well, not through Verizon,
Yeah, not for Verizon.
other distro UI.
I mean, theoretically, there's no reason why the three-part driver or other SC drivers can't report their ports that they see in the volume stat. That's kind of weird.
It'd be easy.
It would be easy to do. But the problem is then how do you get that out to make it useful to the zone manager? Because even creating a blacklist is still going to be a manual process.
Yeah.
You have to decide after looking at that dictionary or whatever you want to report it out as, which one you want to use. And that is not very Cinder-y.
Right.
Or cloudy.
Oh, it's definitely not cloudy. These are, you think about, these are things for tweakers.
Yeah. I say just implement a blacklist in the zone manager and start with that.
Yeah.
That'd be easy to do.
Yeah, I think trying to get the API, trying to get all the drivers to implement it first, like, better off, like, scraping, writing some of the like, and when I say better off, it's pragmatic approach, that realistically, unless you're gonna
You probably get a few of them, yeah. You need it, you do address it.
Yeah.
The other 20 army count drivers. The blacklist.
That would be easy to do, yeah.
So do you want me to write up a spec for the blacklist, whitelist, or just implement it and put a patch out there?
I don't think you really need a spec for it.
Okay.
It's not that big of a feature, and it's an option, and the zone manager just reads it and filters stuff out. There's no change to anything else anywhere. What do you think, Joe? That seems easy to me.
If you're comfortable with it, that's fine with me.
It's not a fundamental change.
Okay.
Speaking of the manager, we still have both drivers in there?
Yep.
Just barely.
And other than that, we were talking about ripping it all out, so evidently we need to keep it. There's another potential long-term change that we could do that would require a spec, obviously, which is to pull the FCCN out and make it a library that people call, because it's not really used in process other than the drivers. Because now the drivers make calls specifically into the zone manager to do the zoning prior to returning now.
It almost kind of smells a little like something that belongs to the brick, right? Like, I'm gonna attach the volume, go zone it.
Or some library, yeah.
Did you have a patch there that got rid of the decorators?
Yeah. I think it might be a while back.
You wanted to take
It
your
didn't work.
zone manager and go home.
But I don't know if we're there yet. I'm curious about this zoning and parallel.
Well, okay, so,
yeah. There we go. Yeah, this patch didn't land, so I'd have to work on that. But it's easy to.
which part was, I couldn't hear.
Well, that was about, we tried to remove the decorators for the zone manager thing, and then giving it to you.
I mean, it could be, as well said, it could be a library call instead.
That's where we're headed, yeah.
Yeah, this would be, this would have to land first in that process of extracting the FCGN from Cinder itself.
So going back to your question on, the zoning in parallel. So today, the zone manager serially walks through the fabrics and does zoning. You could quite easily just, spin up a thread for each one of them and zone them in parallel. As an option.
Like, build the new zone map thing, if we don't have to.
Yeah, so the way it works, so it goes through, it builds the zone map, and then it, builds the zone, and if it needs to zone it, it creates a zone.
Yeah.
So you can do that in parallel. If you got two switches A and B, you can do that at the same time.
Right.
And so really what we see is, if it takes, 20 seconds to zone the first switch, it takes 20 seconds to zone the second switch, which is 40 seconds, and we'd like to get that down to 20 seconds. It has to do it at the same time.
So, yeah, the zoning, each switch in parallel.
Yeah.
Not like parallel operation.
No. Each individual switch, zone.
Isn't that just a change of the zone manager itself then?
Yeah, it's just a change to the zone manager. You have to change a little bit of locking and, so that you.
Oh, yeah, we do have locking in there,
Yeah.
so it's the one per. That was originally put in because the rotate switch couldn't do more than one at a time, because it was all SSH based.
Yeah,
And it
either
just blew it up.
Let's just go with certain things.
Yeah. If you have multiple FC drivers up and running, you could get multiple calls, and now that we're doing clustering, even more.
And so that goes into the last piece of this, which is what we see when let's take an example that, a real world case. We have vendors that actually attach 500 volumes to a VM. So if I attach 500 volumes to a VM, and it takes 5 seconds to figure out that zoning already exists, that's 4,500 seconds I've spent just figuring out that, that zoning is already there. We'd like to be able to set things up so that the driver can tell us, I need to create zones or I don't need to create zones. And if I don't need to create zones, the zone managers wouldn't create zones, he wouldn't even go out and check to see if it needs to look at the fabric. But that problem is that every driver would have to make a change if they wanted to take advantage of this.
Can't you just shove that out inside the add zone or create zone?
Well, the driver has to, typically you would only zone when you create a host entry on the backend storage. So when 3PAR creates a host entry, I have to zone. If I found an existing host entry, for this, for the set of WWPNs, then you wouldn't necessarily need to.
We create that target map every attach.
I thought in the drivers, the thing that you have to return back, you can go and look and see what's already zoned and what you're trying to zone. The driver gets to decide. So after the first time it's zoned, it's
it knows that it's already been zoned.
Yeah,
those 2 endpoints.
Does that not happen?
Yeah, well, okay, so there's overhead in that. So what I see in my testing is, it's about 5 seconds. So you take the lock, you go query the switch to see if this is already zoned. And at that point, it's not already zoned, okay, I return, right? Yeah. Okay, so it's another 5 seconds or so to actually create the zone. We're spending 5 seconds making that determination that I don't need to zone. So I'm trying to not extend that 5 seconds on every volume after the first one.
I think you're gonna still have to check because you don't know if the last hash has removed that zone. You can't know that. There'd be too many races.
There were too many races. There'd be too many races to prevent that.
Yeah, because you could have a detach going on at the same time as attach is going on and get de-zoned right before you try and add the zone again, and then the previous state of the zone manager would be telling the driver, don't go now, because it's already there, so.
Possible maybe we
I think it's,
smart.
well, okay, so,
Zone manager.
I guess it would depend on what locking the driver itself does, when it does an initialize and terminate connection.
Yeah. So I know our driver locks around,
Yeah.
but I don't know if all of them do.
Actually, all of them don't.
I don't think ours does. We got rid of it on purpose because it caused so many other problems.
I think we might have gotten rid of ours too. Part of getting
think
ready
most
for your
times-
PTG, and stuff.
Yep.
We don't strip it on.
Because the locking doesn't work in that
Exactly.
respect.
Or you have to deploy
Or you have to make it,
FTP or something. This seems like something that we can improve upon and still keep our safety guarantee.
I thought the zone manager and the drivers themselves kept an internal mapping
Maybe?
and looked there first before going out to the switch.
I'll have to go back and look, 'cause that's not
Yeah,
what.
I haven't looked in a long time, but
It'd be great.
it would be something to look at if you want to speed that up.
Yeah, if they don't do that, it should help a lot.
It would help a lot.
I'd be curious to know too, why it's so slow to see what's zoned. And it might be that if they're not keeping that map already, then that's an easy culprit. If they are keeping the map, something else would be.
I'll look at that.
And it's probably gonna be dependent on the switching, because they're not geared toward thousands of requests, but hey, what's zone, what's up?
Yeah, that's probably part of it too.
So it sounds like we all agree that that should be a thing. It's just a matter of whether it actually is already and how broken it is.
Yeah.
Which
switch opinions, I think.
I can check and see if our three parts that we have the either are FD or not.
So the like zone on first volume attached, Jay.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see how well zoning fabric and parallel and fan switch actually work. So the switches can handle it.
Well, like you still have to, each individual switch would still have to have a lock, so it only does one at a time.
Oh.
We know that it does not, they don't handle parallel operations to the same switch
That makes sense.
well.
So if you have two in the fabric, that needs to be going then.
Yeah, it's each switch can only work.
Okay.
All right, anything more on that?
I think that was everything I wanted to bring up.
Okay. So are you going to like for the,
I'm gonna try and rebase that patch and get it up to date and see if we can get it to last.
So that would require all the drivers to change to take the deck figure out, right?
Yes, I did that, that's part of the patch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Sean was pointing out that a lot of those drivers don't exist anymore, so that's really smart.
It's handy.
Easier.
so on the other items, Gerald, so like the options to zone and parallel, is that something you're gonna investigate?
Yes.
Using that? Okay.
I will investigate that.
Okay.
And, propose a patch.
Okay.
And then likewise with a blacklist and whitelist, propose a patch as well.
Anything gonna happen with known aliases?
I need to talk to Brocade and Cisco. I don't think I can do that without making some changes as well.
Okay.
Are both their CIs still running?
Brocade's fallen off the map and at the moment, their management is working on it. Or Angela said she would pass it along to management, and she said, how long do I have? And I said, well, we just started Rocky, so I can mark you unsupported.
How do I tell? I've been trying to figure out how I tell if their CI is not working. I found one website and it wasn't really telling me if their CI was working or not. To be honest, I've actually pinged both Cisco and Brocade when their CIs weren't working.
So if you go to Sean's handy dandy webpage, which is understats.I'veHeardItBothWays.com, and go to third party CI status report.
Down at the bottom.
So Brocade CI, last seen September 11th of 2017.
What it's worth, Gerald, it looks like they're doing reference counting in the zone manager on the map. So if it's already mapped, you probably should call it.
Something
So that would be an easy change then, right?
Yeah, good to see about it.
Yeah.
Or like the driver's not doing that thing. I remember like when I was implementing that, it's like some weird song and dance you have to do that. I just copied from Street Guide.
Yeah.
So, and everyone probably just copied it from there, so.
Yeah.
I can send you the link.
Can you send me the link? I can't take a picture of it.
Don't really want to look through all these.
Yeah, but look at that nice. That nice page.
That's a real nice color. I like the horse in the bottom too.
I was trying and it ended up being a little off. I'm like, actually, that's kind of nice.
Yeah, it worked really well.
Can you click on it? I'm going there.
Redirected to a page on the newer.
Better than what?
So my wife texted me and said that a lot of restaurants are closing early, so we probably shouldn't, so.
That means we should close early. Yes. Like right now.
Maybe in 3, 5.
Drink.
Yep.
Okay, stop Saturday morning.